G'day guys and gal. A Space Marine is considered the pinnacle of super soldiers. Extreme strength, speed, reflexes, accuracy, and IQ are some of the basic things that define them. Notice how I said extremely high IQ instead of extremely smart. They're not very smart at all. Half of them pledge their souls to hell because their clearly deranged fathers told them to. So it's always a treat throwing the best and brightest from other franchises at them in a deadly duel to see who would come out on top. The issue with a lot of powerful things is they're not beaten because they were outclassed, but it's because the plot demanded it. It would be really hard to milk the Terminator franchise as hard as they have if the T-1000 walked in, killed Arnold, who was a T-800, and then roundhouse kicked Sarah Connor so hard that she looked like that demon child from The Exorcist. The T-1000 is clearly better in every way to the T-800, it's in the name after all, but they needed to craft a story there. We aren't bound to corporate exploitation of franchises nor the desires to create sequels here, hence the fights I create are based purely off what would happen if the results was inconsequential to any plot. Today we'll be comparing a Space Marine against 3 different Terminators, the T-800 aka Arnie, the T-1000 aka Technological Jizz, then the T-3000 aka Scary Boy. Yes, I'm aware that there are other models, but to keep it simple we'll go for those 3. To do this, we'll be measuring their strength, speed, intelligence, weapons and armor and skills, as well as some of the feats they have achieved. We will then pit them against each other in a hypothetical battle which, if this video ends up being popular, I will get animated just like I did with Doomslayer vs Astartes. Now, I don't believe in begging for subscriptions. If something is good, I will hit subscribe. However, last video I issued you guys and gal a challenge which I will now reissue because it did really well last time. If you laugh or crack a smile at some point during this video, then please consider subscribing. We're literally a flick of a dick away from 100k, which is very epic. Let's get into it. Starting us off with the Terminator, more specifically the T-800/T-850 aka Arnie, clocking in at nearly 300 kilograms or around 600 pounds for you primitive degenerates in the audience, this killing machine is a genuine beast. What's even scarier is that despite the T-800 seeming to kick the ass of every other Terminator model on this list, he required silly amounts of plot armor as well as help from humans who had even more plot armor to do so, meaning he's the weakest Terminator we will talk about today. In reality, the movies did display the power level difference between the Terminator models pretty well, as despite putting up a good fight, Arnie got his ass kicked time and time again, and only won last minute due to cheesing the fight really hard via explosive suicide or getting saved via last minute clutch. In reality, the only thing Arnie has on the other T-800s is his experience, which only really serves to give him more of a personality. His build and power is identical to all other T-800s. While unfortunately we don't get to see Skynet's gym in action, we do get to see the T-800s do some seriously roided up stuff. One example is being able to hold up this big ass steel door. And while we don't have the exact numbers on it, we can say that it's at least 10 tons of force bearing down on him. This combined with the fact that he was also using one arm at the time and was heavily damaged, gives him a lifting force at around 20 tons. Obviously this does depend on the weight of the door, but it looks like it's a pretty serious door. After all, it was designed to hold off against nukes. To back up this strength further, remember the scene where he carries a metal-lined bulletproof reinforced coffin full of guns, ammo and John? That coffin would have weighed around a ton, but the really impressive thing is how he's holding it. That is not an easy way to hold something. I would pop a hemorrhoid instantly if I tried to hold anything like that for a long period of time. Fortunately for us, a T-800 speed has already been outlined, allowing them to hit bursts of speed up to 35 km per hour or 22 miles per hour for you uneducated seaman eaters watching this. While this is impressive for sure, it doesn't match Usain Bolt's max speed of 45 km per hour. However, the Terminator can hold his pace longer than Usain can. In saying that though, the Terminator's strength was never at speed, as they seemingly insist on walking menacingly towards their targets. For the T-800 at least, this meant that their agility was pretty crap. They never duked, weaved or dodged, they just ate whatever was thrown at them. I'm not sure if this was due to some kind of robotic arrogance where they saw themselves as indestructible so they may as well enjoy what they do, or if the plot just realised that a Terminator sprinting full pelt at John Connor would end the movie really quickly. Despite their seemingly lack of agility, their reflexes are insane, able to block bullets mid-air. A Terminator does begin to shine more when durability is involved. A Terminator is built out of a triple armoured hyper-alloy combat chassis, which is a fancy way of saying it's harder than I am in the morning after necking a bottle of Granddad's Viagra. This makes it more or less immune to small caliber firearms, as well as allowing it to eat a few hits from a grenade launcher. If you do manage to blow this boy to bits, that doesn't mean you've stopped them. They have 2 power sources. Think of it like 2 hearts, and they will still come for you despite missing various limbs or sustaining serious damage. Oh yeah, and apparently it's a pain in the ass to freeze or melt them. Being robots, they also feel no pain, so only in death does their duty end. In terms of skills, the T-800s take advantage of machine learning, hence why Arnie's seem to be more advanced than the newer, less experienced T-800s. They generally have expert level skills with all weaponry and are extremely accurate, as shown by Arnie's ability to unload a Browning machine gun into a group of policemen with one hand and not hit anyone. In terms of equipment, the T-800s can use anything, although they're often equipped with 2 M25 phase plasma rifles, as well as extra fun stuff like retractable claws. So what about the T-1000? Well, these guys are definitely an upgrade over the T-800, but in a weird way. Firstly, they look like they jizzed all over themselves whenever you shoot them. They go all liquidy and get a gnarly O-face. Unlike the T-800, which was a robot with standard robot parts, the T-1000 was made of mimemic polyalloy, basically making him a shapeshifter. Due to their ability and nature to change itself, it had an insane amount of self-awareness, meaning it could defy Skynet programming if it wanted to, hence why there wasn't many T-1000s ever made. Skynet ironically didn't want its robots rising up against them. The liquid form has some trade-offs. Firstly, it's way more durable, kind of. The liquid form means it's really easy to break them apart and cause temporary damage. However, the T-1000 can always reform and repair itself as it eats hundreds of bullets, explosions and force with next to no visible damage. If anything, it actually wants you to cut its limbs off because then it can just stab you with them. The only time the T-1000 took lasting damage beyond its death was when it was frozen with liquid nitrogen. It seemingly lost some of its ability to shapeshift successfully, but when it comes to a straight up fistfight, it wasn't too dramatic or crippling. In terms of strength, the T-800 and the T-1000 are more or less equals as seen by their fights. The T-1000 jizz-like consistency has the drawback of reduced physical power. The T-800 can also maintain its form after suffering damage, while the T-1000 will pretty much always be staggered by any form of damage as it needs to heal from said damage. Due to its form, the T-1000 is miles ahead in terms of speed and agility, with the top running speed of 64 km per hour and the agility to match. However, once again robotic arrogance comes into play here, as the T-1000 would love to just walk at their targets acting all spooky. At least for the T-1000, their self-awareness can explain their literal arrogance, but once again, if this dude took advantage of his speed, Sarah, John and Arnie would have all eaten a fat pile of dicks within 10 minutes of Judgment Day. As I stated before, the T-1000 doesn't have weapons as he is a weapon. The liquid form of the T-1000 makes it more susceptible to extreme temperatures, as well as acid, something the T-800 is actually more resistant to. And now finally we have the T-3000. Now, Skynet has a habit of making terrifying looking robots to demoralize their enemy, but the T-3000 really takes the cake. Unlike all other Terminators, the T-3000 isn't built or created. It was originally a human that gets infected by Skynet, transforming their cells on a molecular level to become nanobots held together with a magnetic field. Obviously this process sounds pretty rape for the human, hence the only one to survive it was John Connor. The T-3000 is an upgrade in every single way over the other Terminators. It's faster, stronger, smarter, and has way cooler powers and regeneration that doesn't involve jizzing. After initially letting the T-800 kick it around for a bit, it shed its human form and then completely taught Arnie a new one, using insane abilities, speed and strength to completely beat him down. Here he even lifts up Arnie, who weighs 300 kilos, with one hand with absolutely zero effort, before then throwing him dozens of meters away with no effort. It was completely one-sided, and once again only the plot and the T-3000 being a retard did the heroes come out on top. After completely manhandling the T-800 like it was nothing, we can safely say the T-3000 is at least twice if not more as strong as the T-800, with the speed to match. The only weakness this model has is that its magnetic field, which can be disrupted temporarily, such as when he was getting punched with magnetic knuckle dusters, but even these hits aren't permanent and can't keep him down for long. To kill him, they didn't even have a weakness to explode, they had to tear him apart on a molecular level in some kind of zappy explodey microwave machine. Overall, all Terminator models are absolute beasts who are often held back by the plot and their strange desire to monologue and drag out kills despite being machines with no emotion. But how do they compare to the Emperor's finest? The Angels of Death, the Skullfuckers of Heretics, Space Marines. Off the bat, Space Marines are huge, standing at around 8 to 10 feet tall in armor and weighing around 500 kilos. They have the strength to match, as these roided up flaccid boys can easily lift a ton, with strength feats showing them still being able to manage 6 tons without too much effort. I would go as far to say that bar one or two retarded authors who thought they were writing for Dragon Ball Z instead of Warhammer, a Space Marine lifting strength is around 10 tons, maybe even 15. Now, being so bulky and heavy, you would think these guys would be slow, but boy, you would be very wrong. In armor, these monsters can maintain a pace of 60 km per hour, and in short bursts even reach 90 km per hour. Some writers once again lost some chromosomes and decided that a Space Marine was so fast that they bound around like a fucking kangaroo in low gravity, but we would choose to ignore that. The best representation of Space Marine speed is from the short series Astartes. They fast, they strong, but are they experienced? Yes, obviously. Space Marines are functionally immortal, hence that many of them are hundreds of years old. Hundreds of years of non-stop wars against the many terrors that the 40k universe throws at them, hence they are extremely adaptable and they know what's up. In terms of loadout, they carry a bolter gun, which is like a fully automatic armor-piercing grenade launcher, as well as a plasma pistol and some kind of powered melee weapon. They also carry grenades, as well as an extra bit of equipment depending on their chapter. For salamanders, this might be an extra flamethrower, and for blood angels, it might be their teeth. In terms of durability, a Space Marine is protected by ceramite power armor, an extremely strong yet surprisingly lightweight ceramic material which is completely immune to all firepower except for highly explosive or the highest caliber weapons, or some cheeky voodoo. Even if you do manage to penetrate their armor, a Space Marine's bones, skin and organs are all reinforced and take excessive force to damage, and even if you do damage them, Space Marines don't care about pain, hence you would have to kill them to stop them, which is made even more difficult by the fact that they have 2 hearts. From the comparison, we could see that the Space Marine has the size and weight advantage, as well as the speed over all the Terminator models bar maybe the T-3000. A Space Marine's strength also matches up against all the Terminators more or less equally, except for, once again, the T-3000. In terms of durability, it would seem that the Space Marine has the edge for the most part, as shotgun blasts would bounce off the ceramite armor without a scratch, yet the same done to a Terminator always seems to stagger them. Overall, it should be a great fight. Here's how it will go down. The Space Marine will be from the Salamanders chapter with the loadout of a Thunderhammer, plasma pistol, wrist-mounted flamethrower, bolter gun and grenades. His opponent will begin with the T-800, and if he is able to beat a T-800, then he will fight a T-1000, and then a T-3000 if he beats the T-1000. After that, we'll be able to determine how the Terminators fare against the Space Marine, and if there is a model out there that can bring one down, or if the T-800 is enough. To set the scene, after a grueling fight against Xenos in a war-torn, scarred and lifeless planet, Tyrone is the last surviving salamander in his squad after they won the engagement. He is shaken, but his body, armor and equipment is intact, and he resupplied ammo off his fallen comrades. He awaits incoming transport to pick him up. As he replays the battle in his head and feels sorry for his fallen brothers, a few dozen meters away the air crackles with electricity, and suddenly a bright light shines. Tyrone prepares himself and aims his bolter gun. When the light dissipates, there stands a very muscular man who looks like he could totally be the protagonist of various 80s action movies despite having little to no acting skills. Tyrone yells,
"Hello, my friend. I am Tyrone. I do not where know you came from, but you are safe now."
The man looks at Tyrone with an expressionless face and scans him. It takes a read on his guns, his armor, even his anatomy. It calculates him to be a significant threat. As Tyrone approaches the man with his gun down, the man, the T-800, raises his 2 plasma rifles and opens fire. The shots hit Tyrone in the chest, leaving blackened, smoking cracks in his armor. Tyrone rages at this betrayal and raises his bolter gun in response, firing a single shot which hits the T-800, enveloping the misguided robot in flame. From the smoke it runs at Tyrone, seeing its plasma rifles as ineffective. Tyrone greets the robot's charge with a charge of his own, significantly faster than the robot's. As the 2 warriors collide, Tyrone uppercuts the T-800, launching it off its feet in a cloud of sparks. He runs to where it landed and picks it up with one hand, by its throat, and begins crushing its neck. The T-800 lashes out and punches Tyrone in the helmet, cracking his visor. Tyrone rips the T-800 in half in response, throwing each half of its body away. As he collects himself after this random attack, the top half of the T-800 launches at him. He swats it away mid-air before pulling out his thunder hammer and slamming it down on the mechanical nightmare, putting it out of its misery. The T-800 had been terminated. Suddenly, Tyrone hears a voice. "Tyrone," the voice says, "I need your help." Tyrone runs to the voice to find a lone guardsman who looks wounded. "Come closer, Tyrone."
Do not worry, my friend. Help will be here soon.
Before Tyrone can finish, he looks down to see the guardsman's arm is now a sharp blade, a blade that was shoved into Tyrone's ribs. Tyrone roars and slams his fist into the guardsman's face, flattening it completely into a liquidy jizz-like substance. He steps back and pulls the silvery blade from his ribs with a grunt. As he looks back over, he sees what was once the guardsman's face reform. The guardsman stands up and stares at the now severely confused Tyrone. Tyrone pulls out his bolter and the guardsman, the T-1000, begins running to the side, each bolter shot missing due to the T-1000's speed, as well as Tyrone's fresh wound. As the T-1000 approaches cover, a bolter hits him in the side, blowing a chunk out of him and throwing him to the ground behind the cover he sought. Tyrone runs to where he thinks the T-1000 is, Thunderhammer ready. As he arrives, the T-1000 is nowhere to be seen. Suddenly, Tyrone feels eyes on him and he quickly turns around to see the T-1000 emerge from a pile of metal scrap. As Tyrone raises his hammer, the T-1000 turns its fists into metal blocks and punches Tyrone in the face, throwing the Astartes off balance before throwing it up with a heavy body shot that cracks Ceramite. The T-1000 follows up the body shot by morphing his hand into a blade and aiming for Tyrone's heart. Before the strike lands, however, Tyrone catches it and breaks it off. He then grasps his hand around the T-1000's neck and lifts him off the ground. His attempts to crush its neck are met with no real results as the liquid form of the T-1000 melts around his hand. In frustration, Tyrone releases the T-1000 and begins belting him with his thunder hammer. Despite the massive force released from each blow and the complete maceration of the T-1000's body, his liquid form keeps regenerating from each shot, even as he's beaten into a pulp. The T-1000 smiled at Tyrone, who then said,
"Alrighty then,"
and pulls out his plasma pistol. The T-1000 smiles turns into a frown as he's hit with a plasma bolt from mere meters away, the heat and force of the blast shredding him on a molecular level. The charred and heavily damaged T-1000 falls to its knees, its melted form attempting to repair itself. Tyrone activates his wrist-mounted flamethrower and unleashes it upon the T-1000. Over 1000 degrees of heated promethium burns through the T-1000 as he screams and claws helplessly before finally collapsing in on itself. The T-1000 had been terminated. Even more confused now, Tyrone scans the area for additional threats. An Inquisitor approaches him and Tyrone raises his bolter at the newcomer.
"Stop right there, friend. There has been a lot of weird things happening today and I don't feel like hugging right now."
The Inquisitor stops in his tracks and sees the crushed remains of the T-800 as well as the melted carcass of the T-1000. He looks at Tyrone and says, "Yes, well, there isn't much point hiding it now that the cat is out of the bag." His body hums and distorts, his flesh and clothes disintegrating to show the form of the T-3000. Tyrone opens fire with his bolter, each shot blowing up a chunk of the T-3000 only for it to instantly reform. He casually walks towards Tyrone, absorbing shot after shot with little to no effect. Tyrone once again roars like the fire gods of old and throws his bolter gun to the ground. He produces his plasma pistol and fires. The shot lights up the T-3000 and blows up his entire upper body, which once again reforms. The T-3000 stops for a moment and frowns. "Ouch," it says, before it begins sprinting at Tyrone. Tyrone welcomes the challenge and charges at the T-3000. He once again goes for the uppercut, however the T-3000 disintegrates before the impact lands. Tyrone then feels a sharp pain to his back as the T-3000 uppercuts his lower spine in return, having reformed itself behind Tyrone. Tyrone is launched off his feet and hits the ground. As he gets up to his knee, the T-3000 is on him, striking at him with blinding fast speed. Shots to his helmet, chest, back and legs are relentless as the T-3000 continues to dissipate then reform at a different point around Tyrone. Tyrone lashes out with a fist and catches the T-3000, punching off half of its face, which it quickly reforms. Tyrone rolls away and unleashes his wrist flamer, lathering the T-3000 in fire as he painstakingly approaches Tyrone. From the wall of fire, the T-3000 grabs Tyrone's wrist and crushes the flamethrower before turning his other hand into a blade and ramming it through one of Tyrone's hearts. Blood flows from Tyrone's mouth as he slams his hand down on the T-3000's head, crushing a grenade down into its chest. With his other hand he lifts up the T-3000 and throws it a dozen meters away, the blade sliding free of his heart. The T-3000 reforms and gets back up, only for the grenade rammed into its chest to explode, blowing the Terminator to dust. Tyrone falls to his knees, his remaining heart working extra hard to keep him alive. He removes his broken helmet as he gets a message that his transport will arrive in 30 seconds. He looks over to where the T-3000 explodes and sees to his horror a cloud of dust beginning to reform into the T-3000. Tyrone rises to his feet, thunder hammer in hand as his other hand covers the wound in his chest.
Vulcan lives!
He roars as he brings the hammer down one last time. The T-3000 catches the hammer with one hand. There is a moment of silence as Tyrone shuts his eyes, knowing what is about to come. With his other hand, the T-3000 morphs it into his blade and shoves it through Tyrone's head, killing him. Tyrone had been terminated. With Tyrone dead, the T-3000 morphs into a wounded guardsman as the evac ship arrives, ready to be taken somewhere else on his unknown crusade. So the result is a bit mixed. A Space Marine could easily beat a T-800 and even a T-1000, however T-3000 is a level of sci-fi and technology that surpasses even 40k standards. His strength and speed exceeded that of a Space Marine, and the only way we know how to kill one for sure is by shoving them into a glorified super microwave. The Space Marine also was not aware of the science behind the T-3000, nor that he needed magnetized weaponry to do even temporary damage. With the right weaponry that I'm sure the Imperium has, or maybe a Psyker, a T-3000 can be killed. So for this, I would say that in 9 out of 10 situations, a Space Marine would beat a T-800, 8 out of 10 situations, a Space Marine would beat a T-1000, and then 3 out of 10 situations, a Space Marine would beat a T-3000. So we can say that yes, a Terminator can beat a Space Marine if they are a T-3000 or above, but in most cases, a Space Marine would shit on a Terminator. And that does us for today, guys, the comparison between a Terminator and an Astartes. If you guys don't agree with this outcome or can think of things the Terminator or Astartes could have done to swing it more in their favour, then let me know in the comments below. I try to read all comments. If you enjoyed this video and want to support the channel, then Patreon is the place to be. Only $1 gives you access to dozens of custom Warhammer sexy artworks, and $10 gives you access to the now sold out and never returning Warhammer hentai calendar. Hit the subscribe button, then hit the real subscribe button for more Death Battle rip-off content. Join the Discord for more memes, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.